Hello, everyone. Welcome to PGCMLS's Community Conversations. Today's topic is college readiness. If you are an educator, a parent, a student who is thinking about college, this is the program for you. And normally our CEO of PGCMLS, Roberta Phillips, would be here hosting, but I'm taking the reins today, and my name is Rachel Zukowski. I am the Program Services Manager for Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And my role in the library system is to coordinate the many programs across our 19 branches. As a former educator myself, this topic is near and dear to me. I was mainly an elementary school teacher, and I would get questions from parents as early on as kindergarten about what to expect as far as the lifetime of their scholars' education and what do they need to be thinking about moving forward. So this is a topic that really means a lot to me. And we are so honored to have our guests with us here today. I will let them introduce themselves and tell us about their work. I think between the two of you, you have over 35 years of expertise in the field of college readiness. So we have the right people here with us today. So let's start with Raji, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rilla Agbadina, lovingly known as Raji. Everyone calls me Raji. I have worked in the field of college career readiness for about 15 years now. I am the owner and operator of Vision Education Services, which is a college consulting company that I work with families individually, helping them through the college path and searching for colleges and helping them through the path. I am so happy and honored to be here with you all today. I really wanted to thank the Prince George's County Memorial Library Services for this opportunity because I think this is a very awesome topic and we're gonna go through some things and have some fun.
Great. Olivia?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Olivia Pearson. I supervise the College Readiness Department for Prince George's County Public Schools. I have been working in education for 20 years. Started as a classroom teacher and realized with my students, everyone needed some college readiness advice and support. And through that, supported students in that role as a teacher. I was a STEM program coordinator, and I have served as a supervisor for college readiness for the last 5 years. I work with our early middle college programs, dual enrollment, and really facilitating access to a college education for all of our students in Prince George's County.
Super. So we have the right experts with us. Just a few technical notes before we get started with our interview. If any of our viewers have comments or questions, you can type those into the chat. We will take them as they are relevant, or if we don't get to them during the conversation, we'll be happy to take your questions at the end of the program. We'll probably run for anywhere between 40 to 50 minutes. So we want to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. And let's start out with our first question. So we do hear the term college readiness a lot. And I wanted to know from each of you, what does the term college readiness mean to you? We'll start out with Raji.
Okay. College readiness means that you are ready from the day you walk onto the college campus for the first time, having the skills, having the knowledge, the academic ability to be successful from day one that you enter college. That's what it means to me.
Great. Olivia?
There are a couple of aspects to college readiness. I like to think of it in two big groups. The first being academically ready. And so that means you can jump right into a credit-bearing course in your college without remediation, and you're able to do well and succeed in that course. And then the second part is really the grit, the hard work, the self-advocacy, independent learner. So some of those soft skills and social emotional skills are needed to move forward without the nudging of your teachers and counselors and parents.
Right. And I think we can all harken back to our college days. I know mine were some years ago. And back when I first set foot on campus for the first time, looks very different from what freshmen are experiencing when they are first going to college this year. So how has the current pandemic changed the face of the application process for college, as well as the college experience overall? How about we have Olivia answer that one first?
Well, I think this pandemic has changed a little bit about what all we do, including the college process. We are working with seniors now, and there have been huge shifts with the SAT and ACT. Our seniors may not have taken these exams that have been so critical in the college application and enrollment process. We have a lot of colleges who are changing their rules and how they look at students. And some of these assessments are optional. Students are not able to travel to the campuses as they have in the past. A lot of them are participating in virtual tours to colleges, and students matriculating to college. We've got a lot of kids at home right now, and they may or may not be going and living on a college campus. If they are on the college campus, they're taking their courses remotely and they're in their dorm, kind of alone without the traditional roommate experience. I have a daughter who is a college junior, and she is home. She has spent her first 2 years on the college campus, came home because of COVID, and she's going to stay home and participate virtually in school. And we're just going to work it out in that way.
That's got to have an effect on mental health as well. I mean, I can imagine, a lot of the advantages and the attraction to going to college is to be around your friends and that social element. So that's got to be a really hard challenge for the students to deal with. So I sympathize with what you and your family are going through. So Raji, do you have anything to add to that?
I think specifically for our rising seniors, it's a very uncomfortable time for them. They're used to being able to, kind of prepare. This is the college season. They have their tests ready. Now they're just, about to start the application process. And now, as Ms. Pearson said, with the SAT not really being, really being offered. Matter of fact, I just heard today that the SAT just canceled some of the tests that they scheduled for this month already. If a student hadn't taken the SAT before we went down, they're very uncomfortable right now. I'm not sure what to expect in the process. Colleges are doing their best. A lot of them have waived testing requirements, but now that leaves the question, okay, what about the other parts of my application? Now, how do I think about the other parts of my application? So there are a lot of question marks for our current seniors, and for our recent graduates. They're deciding whether to go to school, whether to defer, whether to stay at home and learn online. There are a lot of different, conversations that our families are having right now to make a decision how best to go forward. So it's a very, 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 very interesting time. And, there are a lot of question marks that are still out there.
So referring to those question marks, we get right into our next big question is, where can parents and families go to find these programs, the answers to the questions, support systems for where they can actually start? What's a great place for people to start who don't know really what questions to ask? Raji, do you want to field that one?
Absolutely. Where my heart is where I would direct parents to go first. You all have professional school counselors, whether you are in the public school system or at a private school. There is somebody who serves in that role at that capacity wherever your child attends school. And that would be the front line that's going to help you and support you through this process, because they know you, they know your child, and they'll be able to provide you with the most accurate information as it relates to kind of what to do next, where you are individually. It's really an individual question. It's not the answer for one family may not be the answer for another family. So it's really important to speak to a professional who you developed a relationship, you have a relationship, and the front line, of course, always is a professional school counselor at your child's school.
That's great. Olivia, do you have additional resources that parents and fellow educators and students can access?
Well, I'd say I definitely agree with Raji that the professional school counselor is that lifeline and connection to college readiness. And one piece that a lot of professional school counselor schools, and I know our system is doing, is updating information on our website. So it seems like the internet is a great way if you cannot or not able to communicate with someone directly, that you can communicate and at least look, read, learn a little more based on their website. And the same goes for colleges. So if there's a specific college that you are looking at, go to their website, see what updates they have, how they're handling different situations, such as visits. A lot of that can be found online.
Amazing. And I also, at the end of this presentation, will be showing some of the PGC MLS library internal resources that you can look up where different schools by location. You can look up different schools by the programs that they offer. So you can sort of have a launch pad, so to speak, to start looking at what different elements that might be important for you and your family. I know that a lot of the college websites themselves are trying to keep up with communicating the most relevant recent information considering the pandemic situation. So let's go to the next question. What piece of advice can you give families of incoming freshmen starting high school? So high school freshmen, we're talking about, they've got a couple years before they're really looking at colleges. What can we tell them to get them started off on the right foot? Would either one of you like to start with that one?
Sure, I can take this one. I think it's really important for freshmen to learn about themselves, what they like, what they don't like. We have several interest surveys and strength finder assessments just so students can learn about themselves, what situation do they thrive, what presents certain challenges for them. And also making sure that they insert strategic rigor into their schedules. And so they're going to start a planning process with plotting out their 4 years in high school and making sure that they are including courses like a dual enrollment course, an advanced placement or IB course in their schedule, but they're thinking about where it can be most effective. So a course that they're interested in, not just because their friends are taking it or their parent says they should take it, but what do they really want to do that hard work and learn more about?
That's a great answer. And I just was hearkening back to when I was looking at colleges. I don't know if I really took that advice to heart because my dad had always been whispering in my ear, this is where you're going to go to college. And he had really inserted his dream of where he wanted me to go to college. I did end up going to that college, by the way, but it didn't really cross my mind as a kid in high school. I really need to figure out who I am first. So that's really great advice. Raji, what about you?
Yeah, I would add specifically in this season where, most of our students will be learning from home. I just want to really encourage our parents to really be there to support your freshmen. This is not easy for anyone. We all know as adults, we know how we've been managing working from home. Imagine being a high school freshman for the first time in high school and having to navigate the system, at least for the first half of the school year at home. So definitely give them rope, give them room to develop and to grow and to kind of navigate things on their own, but still be there just to kind of as an additional support, because they may not want you to believe that they need the additional help or support, but it's really important because, everything is online. Our students are, you know, can be very stressed out about the whole process. And so it's really important that we don't just leave them, you know, to their own wills to do this, that we really have to be there to support them, push them, encourage them a little bit more, but be there to catch them if they happen to slip back and fall.
Thanks. So we do have a question from an audience member. Vivian wants to know, and I think this might pertain to people who are even thinking about going on college visits, you know, what do we do about the safety of being on college campus? I know that's a very like individual to each campus question, but any just general advice as we start planning campus visits or even kids going back to school to actually attend?
I think it's important to make sure that you're always in contact with your institution. A lot of the colleges are really good right now of posting all of their guidelines that they have in place, whatever their COVID plans may be. You want to make sure that before, if this is a college visit or maybe your child going to college for the first time, that you all are very knowledgeable of what the school's policy or procedure is as it relates to how they're maintaining the safety of students. There's some schools that are virtual and they're allowing students to stay on campus. There's some schools that are virtual and they're not allowing students to stay on campus. There's schools that are going back and forth on it as we speak. Even here on the 20th of August, some schools have not quite made the decision yet. So it's just important that before, you know, you make a decision that you're up to date on the latest information your institution is providing so that you can make the best decision for your child. And then, you know your child. If it is that your child is leaving for college, if you know that, you know, you haven't had any, you know, they're independent, they're able to, you know, make decisions and process and, you know, navigate things well, maybe there won't be an issue or anything to be concerned about. But if your child maybe needs additional support, you know, you're kind of on them a little bit more to making sure that they make sound decisions. Maybe it may not be a decision, but really that is an individual family conversation that should happen before any major decisions are made. But stay up to date with what's happening at your child's college campus or at the campus you're interested in visiting. There's some schools right now that are not even doing visits at this point. They have not opened the season for college visits. So if it's a college visit, you want to make sure that the school is in fact accepting those or having those right now, because a lot of schools are not.
Good point. And I know there are such things as virtual campus tours. So that's something to look into if you just want to get a general gist. So anything to add to that, Olivia, before we go on with our questions?
I think the only thing I would add is just at this time, we're all having to be okay with not knowing and not creating solid plans. And so we can have a plan, but sometimes situations change, and therefore our plans have to change. And so really not being stuck to one particular plan as to what you think the college visit is going to be, or you know, your child going to college and going for this period of time. I think all of that can change, and just being ready to accept that and then make actions as it relates to whatever the changes may be.
Thanks so much. And
then try to be creative a little bit too. Like, you know, if it's a local school you want to visit, just jump in the car and just drive around. You don't have to get out the car. If it is that you especially if it's a school that's local, just do a drive-by. I mean, that may be the best opportunity you have at this point.
Mm-hmm. Great point. I think to Vivian's question is, the only guarantee is that there are no guarantees right now. It's really hard to guarantee anything in a global health emergency. So we just have to kind of make the best decisions we can for ourselves and our families. I really like the idea of just going, you know, I live right next door to Catholic University, so I've been keeping my eye on what's happening over there. But when there were no students around, it was really great to just like get on my bike with my mask on and go trolling around the campus and just looking at the beautiful buildings and things. So there's ways to kind of get that perspective without really being in the mix. So great. The next question is, what piece of advice would you give a rising senior as it relates to the college process? So kind of fast forward from that freshman in high school to like you're about to go off to your next part of life. Let's see. Let's try Olivia this time, starting.
Sure. I think part of what I would reiterate is to have several plans, knowing that your top choice or what you thought was your top choice, um, it may change. There are other situations that come into play. So really be open to the process and understanding that things have to be flexible. Speaking from the perspective of when my daughter was going through the process, and I have a niece and a goddaughter who are freshmen in college right now that just moved in last week and this week. And um, I don't think either of them anticipated what has occurred. And so for these seniors, I know they have an idea of what their senior year is going to look like and what that prep for college would be. And so I would say just really try your best in your college classes, and just take it from there, and see if you can participate in different opportunities. So if you have not already signed up for an AP course, maybe add an AP course to your courses, seeing that we may or may not have SAT and SAT or ACT scores. So try to make yourself look as wonderful and accomplished as possible, with the opportunities that you have available at your school.
Great. So Raji.
I would like to add, just of course, because at this time there's a lot of things we don't know about. So focus on the stuff that you do have control over. So right now, as a entering senior, you're about to embark on the college application process. Work on your essay. Make sure your essay is a well thought out, well written essay. You know you're going to need teacher recommendations. So, you know, when the school year starts, start early to go reach out to your teachers to ask them to write you a letter of recommendation. You know you're going to need one from your school counselor. So these are things that you can control that are within your power. Whether you take the SAT or not, or have taken the SAT, that's not really in your control right now. You know, what options or what things may happen as a result of where we are right now, those things you don't have control over. You do have control over the different pieces of your college application. So don't wait. Do not wait to the last minute. If you're not submitting SAT or ACT scores, understand that those other documents are going to be extremely important, because that's all they're going to have to go off of to identify who you are as a person, as a student. So you don't want to wait to the last minute. Give your teachers time, give your school counselors time to write you a quality letter of recommendation, and take time to write a quality essay, because those are going to be weighted so much more now, especially if you're not going to have SAT scores to go along with your application packet.
Super advice. We have a question from Kamara in our audience. She says, greetings, I'm a high school counselor who has seniors this year. What type of activities would you all recommend to celebrate student acceptances and scholarships? So we know when the happy news comes in and we can't give them a hug and give them a cake or a cupcake, you know, what can we do to keep the motivation and excitement high for these students?
Social media. So I know a lot of school counseling departments actually have their own Twitter accounts, their own Facebook accounts, their own Instagram accounts. It's an excellent way to get that information out there. It's a good way, of course, to get your kids and your students engaged. So in them being engaged, they can celebrate each other on things that they're doing. We have to be creative in this season, because as we know, we're not physically seeing them, but because we know where our students are, which is social media, we should make sure we use social media as much as possible to celebrate them, because we know they'll see it. We know it will get to them.
Cute. Like that idea. Olivia?
I concur with you, Raji. Social media, absolutely. And even planning events, virtual events with the students and their parents throughout the year is another great way to celebrate the students and also check in with them on their status with these college applications and teacher recommendations.
Neat. I know that around graduation time this last summer, there were a lot of like car parades, and we had, a couple of things come through our neighborhood where we would just stand out there and socially distance, but, like with signs and balloons and fun things like that. So I know that, acceptance into college is a more rolling individual basis, but, just taking some inspiration from those end of the year celebrations would be, I think.
And the more the kids see you utilizing it, the more they'll get involved. If you create a Instagram account, for example, and you post a picture of a student who got into a college, word will spread, the other kids will get engaged, and they'll be sending you stuff to post as well. So it's really about getting them engaged, and the momentum will create itself.
Great. So Kamara thanks us. So thank you for your questions from the audience. They've been great. So let's get to the next question. What is dual enrollment, and how can we support college readiness goals for these students?
So dual enrollment is when we have students who are enrolled in one of our high schools, and they also simultaneously are enrolled in college. Prince George's County Public Schools has a partnership with Prince George's Community College as well as Bowie State University. And we have a budding partnership with University of Maryland College Park to support students in these roles. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for students to take the college level rigor that they'll get academically. Also, it will test their grit, their independence, but they're still connected to that professional school counselor, that high school teacher. They're still living at home. And so they have the support of all of the tribe that come together to help them academically, socially, emotionally, to ensure their success. And it's been a great next step for students to kind of test the waters with college, and it's a great gauge really to see how they're going to do it once they graduate.
Raji, anything to add?
I mean, Ms. Pearson is right on point. I had a student last year who loved dual enrollment. He took several classes. He ended up being part of the honors program at the community college because he did so well in his classes. And his college recommendation, his college professor wrote that for him. So, like it's a wonderful opportunity, for all students to take a part of. And, you never know what opportunities may come as a result of you participating. So definitely, I would recommend for students to take the option.
Is that still an option for this upcoming school year, or would that be for the next school year?
So we do have opportunities for spring 2021. And so when students return to school, they would definitely connect with their professional school counselor, and they will be able to let them know what the process is this fall so that students are able to participate in spring 2021. And just a note also, this opportunity is for our students who are in grades 11 and 12.
Good to know. I learned something every day, so that's really cool. So what is an important skill or trait to have when you're thinking about college readiness?
I think Ms. Pearson actually mentioned it a couple of times so far during this presentation. Grit. Grit, I believe, is the most important skill or trait to have because actually there is a researcher, her name is Dr. Angela Duckworth, and she's actually done research. I believe she works for Stanford University. She's a researcher at Stanford University, and she actually researched this in the education system. Above any other factor, maybe academic ability, intelligence, socioeconomic background, no matter what the category was, grit was the indicator that determined whether a student was going to be successful. So it's not just about you being a student who, is able to grasp content easily, you can ace tests. It's not about that, because at some point there is going to be something that's not going to come to you that easily. And what do you do when things don't work out the way you think they're going to work out? Are you going to give up? Are you going to try to find an easy way out? Or are you going to press in and push to get what you need to get so you can be successful. So grit is that one skill. If you give me a student with grit, we can get you anywhere you want to go.
So fall 7 times, get up 8.
Yep.
I also like the term fail, first attempt in learning. So, you know, just because you fail the first time doesn't mean that you're going to fail the next time or the next time after that. So good advice. Anything additional? I mean, what if you don't have grit? I mean, I feel bad if you know, you get knocked down a couple of times and you get frustrated. Is there anything that you can do if you really need help kind of finding your oomph? Olivia, do you have any suggestions?
I really think trying to find a best fit. And so if you don't know if you have grit, if things kind of come easily to you, really trying to match your skill that you have with what you want to do, what you want to study, because it may really serve you well. And so I think that that's another important thing to think about. And organization is also huge. So I think when I speak to students, and if they're overwhelmed or they're not able to really do well, and I talk to them, a lot of times it comes down to organization also. And so do you have what you need? Do you have it in the way that you need it so that you can be successful? I think organization is also a skill that is very utilized as it relates to college readiness and ability to succeed.
Thanks. So what do you think are the biggest mistakes students and families make when they're thinking about the college selection process?
I have met with several families, and one of the things that I think doesn't come into the conversation early enough is really finances and the cost that it takes for a college education. There are multiple avenues for students to get support with finance in college, but all of those conversations, I believe, should happen early as possible and as often as possible. And some students have a dream school, and the school may be $80,000 a year. And having that conversation to say, this is what the family can support. And so if you want to continue with this school, you're going to have to, you know, apply for scholarships, work a job, just having those real conversations and to help students understand, you know, when they're going to college, you know, it's real money, right? It's not monopoly money. You can't just make it up. There are a lot of decisions and factors that come into play. And so everything's a possibility. We just have to know how you're going to get there and how you're going to make it happen.
Are there any tips, kind of piggybacking on that, are there any tips to, let's say your dream school is out of reach financially for the time being, are there stepping stones to get there besides amassing a lot of money really quickly? I mean, I'm thinking of scholarships or maybe trying for a community college to get some credits before transferring, things like that. What about you, Raji? Any tips?
Yeah, I think Olivia is absolutely right. And one of the funniest things is when I meet with my clients, when I meet with families individually, a lot of times when we start talking about this college list, parents want to get up and walk away. And I always say, no, you have to be included in this discussion. Of course, there are 3 categories of schools. You have your reach schools. Most people, when they think of reach schools, they just think of those schools that maybe their data doesn't quite match up to. Either their SAT scores are not quite there or their grades are not quite there. But that also includes finances. So if there's a school that you have a desire to go to and there's no way, or your family resources are not there at all, that school should be in that reach area as well. It really should be. The schools that fall into your kind of average list, the schools that you meet the criteria for in terms of data with SAT scores, grades, and such like that, that also includes finances as well. I think Olivia hit the nail on the head. Finances have to be included in the discussion. Now, it doesn't mean you don't apply. You never know what opportunities are out there. But the reason why you include the conversation about finances at this early stage is because you know now what you need to work towards. So if you know now that your dream school, your family is probably, you've gone onto their website, every college has a tuition calculator on there where you can actually, put in and find out how much it's going to cost. If you know right now your family can maybe only do half of the cost of that school, then you need to step your scholarship game up. You need to be applying to a lot more scholarships. You need to work with your school counselor or any individual, the college or career person at your school, to make sure that you're getting as many scholarships and applying to as many scholarships as possible. I'd never, ever want to discourage a kid from putting a school on their list for any reason, but just be realistic about what's on your list and be realistic about what options you have. Because the worst conversations I ever have, my conversations I dislike the most, are the ones in April, when the student has gotten into the dream school and then that financial aid package comes and it's like, we can't afford to go. Those are the worst conversations. So we have to talk about finances very, very early in the process so that we know what we're looking at as we move forward in the process.
Awesome advice.
Can I just add to that briefly that I think, Raji, I really like what you said about including the parents in the conversation with the school choice, because I think with parents, having a very transparent conversation with your child about what you may have or not have saved, or what you can budget or cannot budget, really helps frame the conversation. So I completely agree. Not taking schools off, but just having a transparent conversation as to what we can or cannot do as a family, and what has to happen to build that gap.
Great. So what would you say the top 2 or 3 things that families should look for when trying to identify the right college for their students and their scenario? Olivia, so go ahead, Raji. Sorry.
I tell my parents, and they always look at me crazy when I say this. Look at the college selection process or the college process as like a financial interaction. Let's say you're starting your own business. If you're starting your own business and you had to invest $30,000 of your money into a business, you're going to make sure that you're making a sound investment. I always tell my parents, your students. Your kids. So whether it's a sound investment to, encourage your child to go somewhere that may be 50 or 100 miles away from home. When, let's say, for example, when they're here at school, you're always on top of them with their grades and everything that they need to do. Is that a sound investment to, put $50,000 into your child going someplace that's far away from home and you can't be around them? We have to have honest conversations with our students about, where they are, where not necessarily where their skill level is, but what they have shown. You want to make a solid investment. So think about it that way. Don't just think about, oh, my child desperately wants to do this. Yes, but what has your child shown you in the past 4 years? No, let's not even go back 4 years. What has your child shown you in the last 2 years? Have they shown you that they are capable and have the skills to have a lot of freedom? If they haven't, it's okay. Maybe going to the local 4-year that's close to home, or the 2-year that's around the corner for a year or two is not a bad idea. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to send your child off 150, 200 miles away from home, and they end up coming back the next semester because they couldn't hack it. That's not a solid financial decision or a solid business decision.
Makes sense.
I agree. And just to pick, as I was going through this process with my daughter, it was interesting because sometimes what you see as a parent is different than what the child sees in themselves. And so I would also just add to be creative. I know my daughter came to me saying she wanted to go to a school in Florida, that it really wasn't a sound business decision for us just because out of state tuition, and she had never lived away from home. And so we had a conversation, and my husband and I asked her to put together a business plan almost. So we asked her for a proposal as to, what she wanted to do at that school and how she was going to attain her goals by going to this particular school. We told her once she gave us that proposal, we would pay for the plane tickets for the entire family to go to the school and kind of check it out. Needless to say, we did not get the proposal. And so for us and to her, that showed what she was willing to do to get to that particular school.
I love that. That is a super tip. I mean, that, because really, if you're not going to get a one-page proposal, how successful is that student? Not to say that your daughter wouldn't have been, but that how bad do you want it? Is this just something you say you want? Are you willing to put your money where your mouth is, or your effort where your mouth is? So that's usually a great way to find out what they're willing to put forth. That's awesome. Let's go on to the next question. We have a few more left before we can wrap up and share some of the resources. What's going to happen with college? I know you're not going to be able to answer this, perhaps, but what's going to happen with college exams like the SATs or the ACT? And if seniors are unable to take them, are colleges going to not accept them, or how is that going to look possibly?
Deep breath. It's one of those unknowns. And like I just said, the SAT just shut down a lot of testing sites for the test that's supposed to be next week. So there are things that are out of students' control. And what I always like to tell families is that they're college admissions offices and not college rejection offices. So their goal is to try to admit you into their school. So majority of schools now are allowing students the option of they are going test optional. There's a website, it's called fairtest.org. You can go onto that website and see the list of all the schools now that have decided to go test optional. A lot of schools are doing that. But for that reason, I will say that if you have the opportunity to take the SAT or ACT and you have not done so, it does not hurt to try to sign up for one if one does become available soon, especially if you're a student who's interested in a highly selective school. Even though most of the highly selective schools, all the Ivies have all decided to go test optional, but let's be real, because a lot of the pool of students who are applying to these schools are, some of the creme de la creme, the top line students, a lot of them took their SATs last December and in January. So what I say to my students, if you're the ones that are applying to highly selective schools, please try to take the SAT, because the SAT can only help your application. And if I'm a college rep and I work at a highly selective school and I have a student who has SAT scores and another student who doesn't, and their profiles are exactly the same, I'm going to pick the student with the SAT, with the high SAT scores over the student that doesn't have them. There are things that are not in your control. If you don't have the opportunity to test, you don't have the opportunity to test. But if you do have the opportunity and you're considering applying to a highly selective school, then it's to your benefit to take the test. And if your score is high enough, definitely send it to those schools.
Great. Anything to add, Olivia?
I echo Raji. I think that if you can try, but understand it's just not in our control. And so I've talked to a lot of people who are signed up for the August test, and the College Board had sent out several notices to families like, we just don't know. It's based on every individual location. People are driving their kids around the state trying to find a location. So if it's in your control and can try, if not, just press on and go to your next plan.
So the standardized tests are like this quantitative measure of academic success. And then you have the essay, which is much more of the qualitative, get to know this student and this person. How important is the college essay in the entrance application? Raji?
I can't say enough how important the college essay is. Matter of fact, I have a quote. Let me see if I remember it right now. Your college essay is the only measure that you can use to show the colleges who you really are. It is your story in your terms with no bias. Every other part of the college application is somebody else's opinions about you, minus, of course, the standardized test, which, most schools don't have anyway. But that college essay is the only thing that you're using your own voice to share to the colleges who you are. This year, above any other year previously, I have to say that essay is going to be so important. The library has a writing, it's called the Writing Center, I believe, and they'll actually proofread your essays for you. But it's bigger than just having your essays proofread. It's important that you use those 500 words, 700 words, whatever limit they give you, to really show them who you are and how you can add to that college. It's not just about you telling a story about, how you feel about different things. I had one student this summer send me an essay, and it was about how he was a vegan and he didn't like people who weren't vegan. And it was a well-written essay. But I said to him when I met with him, I said, what does this essay say about who you are? What do I know more about you from reading this essay? You have to make sure you use those words very wisely and you maximize the impact. You want that person who's reading it to remember the essay and remember it for good reasons.
Absolutely. And make sure in your essay, you're not highlighting something that's somewhere else. So if you have a resume that goes through, you were the president of this club or all of your other accolades, this is not a time to just reiterate your resume. This is a time where you really can give some depth to what did it mean for you to earn these grades? What did you have to do? What did you go through? What were some of your challenges? Tell a story. It should be a good read, but it really needs to get at who you are and what you want to show. And again, we may not have SAT scores. And so this is what you have to show. And even though you can, tell your story and you shouldn't focus just on the semantics of it, but you really have to make sure there are no typos. So basic things, your grammar, your subject-verb agreement, all of those things that you think are very basic are going to become very important. Because as Raji said, you want them to remember your essay, but not to remember your essay for, the essay with all the typos. Like I kind of got what they were saying, but there were so many typos, or I couldn't determine one thing from another.
So I think on that point, this would be a great time for me to bring up BrainFuse, which is our online tutoring. I'll share my screen, actually. Can you see this okay? I don't know if it came through, but yeah. So this is Help Now BrainFuse, and you can actually get tutoring help all afternoon until midnight, starting at 1 p.m. And you can also submit your writing samples to be critiqued and proofread through the Writing Center. This is also where you can get live FAFSA help. So if you're filling out the financial aid paperwork, you can have someone walk you through the process if you're not sure how to do it. So this is a really great resource for not only just, if you're in school, elementary, middle, or high school, but if you're really thinking ahead those next steps. BrainFuse also has this thing called eParachute. And getting back to finding out who you are and what you want to do, it has a series of little quizzes and questions that will lead you to some options of career fields and, what might you want to do with your life? Kind of these bigger questions that people need to ask themselves before they really commit to a life of a certain subject or a minor or major. So this is a really great opportunity. The link is in the window here. I also wanted to bring up a different resource that we offer at the library that's completely free again. And that is Career Transitions. And this is where you can search for schools. If you're not really sure where to start, it's a great way. You just click on the right-hand side, find schools and programs, and you can do search by a lot of different criteria. You can look for schools within the 50 miles. So like if I look for secondary education, let's see, secondary school teachers 50 miles of Largo, Maryland. And then I'll get community college, UMD, Gallaudet. There's all sorts of options. And when you click on these colleges, you'll be able to find out a lot more information about each of these colleges, and that might help steer your decision. It'll give you the ratios of men to women, how much it costs per semester and year, what the professor to student ratio is. It gives you a lot of valuable metrics that you can help make your decision. While we're here, I also want to plug that everyone who has not filled out their census yet, please do. We still have time to do that. That money adds up to about $18,000 per person who completes the census, and that goes back into our education and our public services. So we still have time to do that. So before we wrap up, I want to first of all thank you, ladies. It's been so informative. Do you have any last words of encouragement or advice for our students and families who are looking towards college?
My only advice would be it's doable. It just may look different, but if you want to go to college, you can go to college. Reach out for support. We're here to help, and just the sky's the limit. So if you want it, we can help you get to it.
I concur with what Olivia said. I really want to encourage those students who maybe, or families right now who you're concerned, maybe you haven't done quite as well in high school as you have previous, you haven't done quite as well in high school as you may have liked to. Please understand there is always a path. You know, like no matter what may have happened in the past, there's always a path. And, you know, maybe you won't take the direct route, but any desire that you have, you can reach it with just a little bit of information and with that grit.
Lovely.
And my website is below. I'm sorry. You can always go to my website and get some more information or schedule an appointment and, you know, get the information that you need to be successful. We're all here to support students to be successful.
Thank you. So Vivian, if you could reiterate your question for us. I know that we tried to answer all the questions in the chat. Were you looking at the question about how to dual enroll as a student or just enroll virtually into a college? I'm not sure if you ladies can see, but you know, Vivian, if you want to send your question to us, we will put our email in the chat and we can try to help you out there. But I do want to wrap up for now. We are coming to the top of the hour. So thank you so much for our panelists, Raji and Olivia. It's been extremely helpful, and I hope that our viewers have found it to be helpful as well. So thank you so much and have a wonderful evening, everyone. Hope to see you at other programs. Bye.